Nora, a kind waitress with dark skin, worked at a busy diner. Every day, she would greet everyone with a big smile and help her customers, especially a disabled man who had been coming there for years. One day, this man gave Nora some mysterious keys and a surprising note. This note would change Nora's life and help her achieve her biggest dream. Nora walked into the diner, her brown eyes shining with happiness. The smell of coffee and bacon made her feel cozy, like she was getting a warm hug. She tied her apron tightly and got ready to start her day saying, "Good morning, everyone." Her voice was cheerful and could be heard over the sound of plates and people talking. Everyone said hello back, and Nora felt very happy. The diner was like a second home to her, and the people there were like family. Nora saw Mr. Johnson, a retired teacher who came to the diner every day for the past 20 years. She asked him if he wanted his usual coffee, and he smiled and said yes. He then asked how her son Logan was doing. Nora smiled and said Logan was growing fast and had a big science project coming up. As Nora poured Mr. Johnson's coffee, she noticed Mrs. Peterson, a new person in town, sitting alone and looking sad. Nora felt sorry for her. She told Mr. Johnson she would be back with his eggs and went over to Mrs. Peterson's table. Nora said good morning and asked how Mrs. Peterson was doing. Mrs. Peterson looked surprised and said she was okay. Nora suggested Mrs. Peterson try the diner's famous blueberry pancakes, which always made her happy. Mrs. Peterson smiled for the first time and agreed to try them. Nora went around the diner, taking orders and bringing food, feeling very happy and purposeful. She knew that every smile and kind word was important. This wasn't just a job for her, it was her calling. When Nora saw Jacob come into the diner, she greeted him warmly. Jacob always looked serious, but Nora knew he had a kind side. She told him his usual spot was ready. Jacob gave a small smile and said good morning, his voice sounding tough but friendly. Nora watched as he moved his wheelchair to the corner table made just for him. She grabbed a menu and a new pot of coffee, then went to his table. "How are you today?" she asked, pouring him a steaming cup of coffee just the way he liked it, black, with no sugar. Jacob shrugged, his eyes on the menu he didn't really need to read. "Same as always, I suppose." Nora felt a little sad hearing how lonely he sounded. "Well, I'm glad you're here," she said softly. "It wouldn't be a proper morning without seeing you." For a moment, Jacob seemed to relax. He looked up at her, his eyes a bit softer. "Thanks, Nora. That's nice of you to say." Nora smiled at him. "Now let me guess. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, and a side of bacon?" Jacob nodded, a hint of a smile on his face. "You've got me all figured out, don't you?" "I try my best," Nora said with a wink. "I'll have that right out for you." As she turned to put in his order, Nora felt a rush of love for Jacob. He didn't talk much, but she could tell he looked forward to these morning visits. His shoulders seemed to relax when he sipped his coffee, and his eyes looked a bit less troubled. Nora made sure to check on Jacob often as she worked around the diner. She filled his coffee, chatted about the weather, and even made him laugh with a silly joke she heard from her son. Nora went back to the kitchen with Jacob's order slip and pinned it to the board. She started thinking about her son, Logan, feeling a wave of love and a bit of worry. She looked at the clock and knew it was almost time for Logan to get ready for school. "Order up," Nora, the cook, called out, sliding a plate across the counter. She grabbed it quickly, still thinking about Logan. Even though he was just 10 years old, he was very responsible and liked to make his own lunch to help her. Nora felt proud of him, but also wished she could do more for him. As she gave the plate to a customer, she noticed the tip jar by the register. It wasn't much, but every little bit helped. She thought about the jar at home, where she saved every extra penny for her dream of starting her own cafe. Sometimes it felt like the dream was very far away, especially when bills were high and the fridge was nearly empty. But Nora wouldn't give up. She had worked too hard and come too far. She kept telling herself, "Keep smiling, Nora. Better days are coming." She believed this strongly, especially for Logan. She wanted to show him that dreams are worth chasing, no matter how hard it gets. As she served coffee and talked to regulars, she thought about her extra shift cleaning offices later. It meant she would have less time with Logan, but the extra money would help buy his school supplies. She reminded herself that it was all for him and felt determined. One day, it would all be worth it. Nora wiped down the counter, her mind busy with dreams and worries. Elena walked over and sat beside Nora, looking worried. "Is everything okay?" she asked gently. Nora sighed and gave a small smile. "I'm just thinking about the future," she said. Elena nodded, understanding. "Do you want to talk about it?" Nora thought for a moment and then nodded. They moved to a quiet corner of the diner and sat in a booth. "I've been saving money," Nora said quietly. "I want to open my own cafe one day." Elena's eyes widened with surprise and admiration. "Oh, Nora, that's wonderful." Nora felt happy because Elena was so excited. "It's just a dream now, but I really want to make it happen for Logan and me," she said. Elena reached out and squeezed Nora's hand. "If anyone can do it, it's you. You're stronger than anyone I know." Nora's eyes filled with tears because she was touched by her friend's support. "Thanks, Elena. That means a lot." Elena's face became serious. "But it won't be easy. Running a business is hard, especially for us." Nora nodded, determined. "I know, but I have to try. I want to show Logan that dreams can come true if you work hard." Elena smiled, feeling proud but still worried. "You're showing him that every day. Just don't forget to take care of yourself, okay?" Nora felt a lump in her throat. Elena was right. The road ahead would be tough. But as she looked around the diner at the people she had come to care about, she knew she wanted a place of her own where she could make not just food, but a sense of community. "I won't give up," Nora said firmly, "no matter how long it takes." Elena gave Jacob's hand a gentle squeeze and said, "We're all here cheering you on every step of the way." Nora walked up to Jacob's table with a friendly smile and a hot cup of coffee. She placed it in front of him and saw he looked a bit lost. "Here you go, Jacob. Just the way you like it," she said softly. Jacob looked at her and gave a small smile. "Thank you, Nora. You always remember." Nora sat down next to him, feeling that Jacob needed someone to talk to. "How are you today?" she asked, showing she really cared. Jacob sighed and traced the edge of his coffee cup with his fingers. "I was just thinking about the old days," he said, pointing at his wheelchair. Nora nodded, understanding what he meant. "Do you want to talk about it?" Jacob was quiet for a moment, then said softly, "I used to run a big company. I thought I had everything figured out. Then, after the accident, everything changed. The business, my family, everything fell apart." Nora reached out and gently put her hand on Jacob's arm. "I'm so sorry, Jacob. That must have been really hard." Jacob looked up at her with tearful eyes. "It still is sometimes, but coming here and seeing your smile helps a lot." Nora felt a lump in her throat. "I'm glad I can help, even a little. You're not alone, Jacob. You have friends here." Jacob smiled sincerely. "I know, and I'm thankful for that, especially for you, Nora. Your kindness means so much to me." Nora gently squeezed his arm, her own eyes filling with tears. "That's what friends are for, Jacob. We're here for each other." Nora's heart felt full as Jacob talked to her. Jacob's face showed he had been through a lot. Nora listened carefully as Jacob told her more about his life. "It's been so long since I've had anyone to really talk to," Jacob said, his voice trembling. "After the accident, my wife couldn't handle it. She left and took the kids with her." Nora felt sad for him and held his hand to show she cared. Jacob continued, "I used to have a big house, a loving family, and friends who visited often. Now it's just me and a small apartment. Sometimes it's so quiet, it's hard to bear." Nora nodded, feeling sorry for him. "I can't imagine how hard that must be, Jacob, but you're not alone. You have us at the diner. We care about you." Jacob smiled a little. I know, and I'm thankful, especially for you, Nora. Your kindness is like sunshine in my life. Nora felt happy to hear that. She always tried to be kind, but hearing this made her see how much it meant to Jacob. You know, Jacob, she said softly, sometimes family isn't just the ones we're born with. It's also the ones we make along the way, and you're part of our little diner family now. Jacob's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Nora. That means a lot to me. As Nora got up to go back to work, she gently squeezed Jacob's shoulder. Anytime you need to talk, I'm here. Don't forget that, okay? Jacob nodded with a real smile. I won't forget. Thank you for everything, Nora. Nora walked away feeling good. Nora felt renewed purpose because her kindness had really helped Jacob, and she wanted to keep being a friend to him. Nora's day started like usual, but on her way home from her job at the diner, her old car began to shake and sputter. She felt a sinking feeling in her stomach as the car stopped completely. She whispered, "Oh no, not now," and tried to start the car again, but it just made a weak, grinding noise. Tears came to her eyes as she realized she was in trouble. Nora called for a tow truck and waited, feeling worried about how she would get to work and afford the repairs. The mechanic's estimate was much more than she had saved, and her next paycheck was already planned for rent and groceries. Later that evening, as she sat on her old couch, Nora felt overwhelmed by her money problems. She thought about her son, Logan, who was sleeping peacefully in the next room, unaware of their latest problem. I can't let this beat me, Nora said softly to herself, wiping away a tear. She took a deep breath and thought hard about what she could do. Maybe she could work extra shifts at the diner or find another temporary job. She could ask her landlord for more time to pay the rent. It wouldn't be easy, but she had been through hard times before and always managed to get through them. As she thought about her dream of opening her own cafe, she felt a new determination. We'll get through this, she whispered to herself, feeling stronger. As Nora was about to leave the diner, she heard Jacob's voice behind her. Nora, is everything okay? He asked, looking worried. She turned to him and tried to smile. Oh, Jacob, I'm okay. Just having some car trouble. Jacob looked concerned. I overheard you earlier. Do you need a ride home? Nora didn't want to be a burden, but she didn't want to wait for the bus either. That would be wonderful if it's not too much trouble. Jacob smiled warmly. As they got into Jacob's van, Nora felt grateful. Jacob skillfully adjusted his wheelchair and started driving. As they drove through the quiet streets, Nora began talking to Jacob. I don't know how I'll manage without my car, she said. With work and taking Logan to school, it will be tough. Jacob nodded, understanding. I remember those days, trying to handle everything. It's not easy being a single parent. Nora looked surprised. You have children? Jacob's face became sad. I had a daughter. Nora and Jacob hadn't talked much after her accident. Nora's heart hurt for Jacob. Oh, Jacob, I'm so sorry, she said. He shook his head, trying to forget the sad memories. It's all in the past now, he said. But he was curious about Nora's son, Logan. He asked about Logan and listened carefully. For the first time, Nora saw Jacob's kind side. When they reached her apartment building, Nora thanked Jacob for the ride and for listening. Thank you, Jacob. It means a lot, she said. Jacob smiled warmly and said, Anytime, Nora. That's what friends are for. Nora felt a warm feeling inside. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she thought. Later, Nora was nervous about bringing her son Logan to work. It was Bring Your Child to Work Day, and she wasn't sure how people would react to her 8-year-old. When Nora and Logan walked into the diner, Nora said, Hi, Jacob. This is my son, Logan. Logan, say hello to Mr. Jacob. Logan peeked out from behind Nora's apron and shyly said, Hello, Mr. Jacob. Jacob's usual serious face softened. He smiled and said, Hello there, Logan. Nice to meet you. Nora felt relieved. She had never seen Jacob with kids before. Jacob asked, Your mom says you like to draw. Do you like superheroes? Logan nodded and said, I love drawing superheroes. Jacob's eyes lit up. I used to collect comic books when I was your age. Who's your favorite superhero? As Logan talked excitedly about his favorite superhero, Jacob listened closely, asking questions and sharing his own stories. Nora was amazed. Jacob was kind and really interested in what Logan had to say. She noticed that Jacob was good with kids, even though he usually seemed gruff. Logan then asked, "Mom, can I show Mr. Jacob my drawings?" Nora wasn't sure if it was okay to ask Jacob, but Jacob quickly said, "I'd love to see them, Logan." Jacob smiled warmly and asked if it was okay with Nora's mom. Nora nodded, feeling touched by Jacob's kindness. As Logan ran to get his backpack, Nora looked at Jacob and silently said thank you. Jacob smiled back with a little sadness in his eyes and said, "He's a great kid. You should be proud." Over the next few weeks, Nora noticed that Jacob came to the diner more often and seemed happier. Their chats became more than just small talk. They talked about their lives and dreams. One quiet afternoon, as Nora was refilling Jacob's coffee cup, she noticed he looked happier. She said, "You seem happier lately, Jacob. It's good to see you smiling more." Jacob looked surprised and said, "Do I? I guess I am. I've been looking forward to coming here more than usual." Nora felt happy and warm inside. She had always hoped her kindness would help people, but seeing it happen made her feel special. She said, "We're always happy to have you here." Jacob then said, "I wanted to thank you. Your kindness has made a real difference. I was in a dark place for a long time, but talking to you and seeing how you stay positive even with your own problems has given me hope." Nora's eyes filled with tears, but she managed to hold them back. She said, "That means a lot to me. I'm just glad I could help." Jacob shook his head and said, "It's not small. You've shown me there is still good in the world and that it's worth trying to connect with people." Nora saw that Jacob had changed. The sadness on his face was going away and he seemed to have a new purpose. Nora realized that by helping Jacob, she had also found something valuable, a true friend who understood her and believed in her dreams. She looked forward to Jacob's visits more and more. His presence made her busy days feel calmer, and their conversations became a bright spot in her day. As they talked over coffee and pie, Nora felt comfortable sharing more about her dreams. "Jacob," she said one day while cleaning the counter, "I've always wanted to open a little cafe. I want it to be small and cozy so people can feel at home." Jacob's eyes grew wide with interest. "Really? That sounds wonderful, Nora. Have you made any plans?" Nora hesitated a bit. "It's just a dream for now. With taking care of Logan and paying bills, it feels so far away." Jacob leaned closer and said seriously, "Dreams are important. They give us something to work towards. From what I've seen, you have the talent and heart to make it happen." Nora felt happy inside at Jacob's words. "You really think so?" she asked. Jacob smiled warmly. "I know so. Even though I'm not in business anymore, I still remember some things. If you want, I can give you advice on starting your cafe." Nora's eyes widened. "You'd do that for me?" Jacob smiled, a big, warm smile. "Of course, that's what friends are for." Over the next few weeks, Jacob taught Nora about business plans, budgeting, and marketing. Nora listened carefully and got more excited with every talk. "You know, Nora," Jacob said one day, "you've got something special. Your cooking is amazing, but it's more than that. You make people feel welcome, and that's rare in business." Nora felt tears in her eyes. "Thank you, Jacob. I never thought I'd get a chance to make my dream real, but talking to you makes it seem possible now." Jacob patted her hand. "It is possible, Nora. You have the skills and determination. Don't give up on your dream. I believe in you." Nora's heart raced with excitement as she sat at her small kitchen table with notebooks and printouts. Jacob's encouragement made her feel like she could really do it. She spent every free moment learning about opening a cafe. She read about loans, health rules, and planning menus. It was a lot to learn, but she didn't let it stop her. She thought of Jacob's words, "You've got the skills and the determination," and used them to keep going when she felt unsure. One evening, after putting Logan to bed, Nora took out a new notebook and started drawing her idea for the cafe. She imagined a warm, cozy place with mismatched chairs and local artwork on the walls. The menu would have her famous pies and hearty meals to make people feel loved. As she wrote, she felt both excited and scared. The costs were high. Rent, equipment. How could she afford it all? But then she remembered Jacob's belief in her and pushed the doubts away. She had to try. The next day at the diner, Nora couldn't wait to tell Jacob about her progress. When he came in for his usual coffee, she was excited. "Jacob, you won't believe what I've been doing," she said while pouring his coffee. "I've been learning everything about opening a cafe. It's scary, but I really think I can do this now." Jacob's eyes crinkled with pride. "That's wonderful, Nora. I knew you could do it. Tell me more about what you've learned." As Nora shared her ideas and worries, she felt warm inside. Jacob listened carefully and gave her advice and encouragement. His support made her dream feel more real than ever before. "You know, Jacob," Nora said, her voice soft with emotion, "I couldn't have done this without you. Your belief in me helped so much." Jacob reached out and patted Nora's hand. "You've always had it in you," he said. Nora felt happy and surprised when Jacob asked her to sit with him during her break. It was rare for him to be so kind, and she felt touched. She looked around the diner to make sure everything was okay before sitting down across from Jacob. "Thank you," she said softly, looking into his eyes. "It's nice to sit for a moment." Jacob nodded, holding his coffee mug. He looked a little sad, and Nora noticed it. "Nora, I want to tell you something," Jacob said quietly. "I used to have a business, but I've never told you everything." Nora leaned in, paying close attention, because she could tell this was hard for him. Jacob started to talk about his successful company that he had built himself. He smiled as he remembered the hard work it took, but then he became sad. "After the accident," he said, his voice breaking, "I lost everything. I lost my ability to walk, my business, my sense of purpose, and even my family." Nora felt sad for Jacob and reached out to touch his arm. "Oh, Jacob," she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry." Jacob looked at her with softer eyes. "It's been hard to talk about," he said, "but seeing you work so hard reminds me of myself when I was your age. I don't want you to give up, no matter what happens." Nora felt a lump in her throat. Jacob's honesty and support made her feel closer to him. She squeezed his arm and promised, "Thank you for sharing this with me, Jacob. Your strength is amazing. I won't give up." As they sat quietly, Nora felt their bond grow stronger. Jacob's trust and his sharing of his past made her more determined to chase her dreams and make him proud. Her world stopped when she got a call from Logan's school. Her son was sick with a high fever, and she needed to pick him up right away. Her heart raced as she told her manager she had to leave early. As she hurried past the tables, she saw Jacob looking at her with concern. "Everything okay?" Jacob asked. "It's Logan," Nora explained quickly, her voice shaking. "He's sick." Nora was really worried because her little boy Logan was sick with a high fever. She had to stay home to take care of him, but she was also scared she might lose her job because she couldn't go to work. One day, while she was sitting by Logan's bed, her phone rang with a message from Jacob. He asked how Logan was doing and told Nora he was thinking of them. Nora felt happy and a bit teary when she read his kind message. She told Jacob how worried she was about Logan and her job. Jacob quickly replied, saying she was doing the right thing by staying with Logan and not to worry about work. His words made her feel a bit better. She looked at Logan, who was still sick but starting to get better, and felt hopeful. Jacob's messages each day made her feel stronger. She knew she could get through this tough time, just like she had faced other challenges before. As Logan's fever went down, Nora felt better and hoped things would improve. One quiet afternoon at the diner, Nora cleaned the counter slowly. There were not many people in the diner, and she saw Jacob sitting at his usual spot by the window, smiling and drinking his coffee. Nora walked over to Jacob and said, "Slow day, huh?" as she filled his cup. Jacob nodded, smiling. "It's nice to have a break. Do you want to sit with me for a bit?" Nora looked around the empty diner and said, "Sure," then sat down across from him, happy to rest her feet. They started talking about food. Nora's face lit up as she talked about her favorite recipes. "Home-cooked meals are special. They bring people together," she said. Jacob agreed, saying, "Food helps people connect. That's why I've always wanted to open a cafe." Nora's eyes sparkled as she shared her dream. Not just a place to eat, but a spot where people can come together, share stories, and feel at home. Jacob's eyes showed interest. "A community cafe," he said, thinking hard. "That's a great idea, Nora. It's not just about food. It's about making a place where everyone feels welcome." Nora nodded. "Yes, a place where lonely people can find friends, busy folks can relax, and families can create memories." Jacob's face brightened, surprising Nora. "I used to work on community projects before," he said, looking at his wheelchair. "But this is something I'd really care about." Nora felt happy and asked, "You'd be interested in that?" Jacob's eyes sparkled with excitement. He said, "It's so exciting to do something special again. With your great cooking and my business skills, we can make something amazing." Nora's heart raced as she looked at the letter in her hands. She blinked and read it again to make sure she wasn't dreaming. The letter said she won a small business grant she had applied for months ago. She had almost forgotten about it because she was so busy. Tears filled her eyes as she realized this was a real chance to make her dream come true. With trembling hands, she folded the letter and put it safely in her apron pocket. She couldn't wait to tell Jacob the good news. Just then, the bell above the diner door rang, and Jacob came in. Nora's face lit up with a big smile as she rushed over to him. "Jacob," she said, her voice shaking with excitement, "you won't believe what just happened." Jacob looked up, curious. "What is it? Nora? You look like you're about to burst." Nora took out the letter, her hand still shaking a little. "Remember the small business grant I told you about? The one I applied for ages ago?" Jacob nodded, and Nora continued, "Well, I got it. They chose me." Jacob's face brightened with happiness. "Nora, that's wonderful news," he said, reaching out to squeeze her hand. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve this." Nora felt a warm feeling in her chest from Jacob's happiness. She hadn't realized how much his approval meant to her until then. "Thank you, Jacob," she said softly. "I couldn't have done it without your support." As Nora shared more details about the grant with Jacob, she felt a new hope growing in her heart. For the first time, her dream of opening a cafe seemed like it could really happen. Her mind buzzed with ideas as she sat across from Jacob at their usual diner table. She opened her notepad, filled with scribbles and ideas for her future cafe. Jacob leaned forward in his wheelchair, his eyes shining with excitement. "What about Nora's Sunshine Cafe?" he suggested with a gentle smile. Nora's heart warmed at the name. It felt perfect, like just what she wanted. "I love it," she said, writing it down. "It's exactly what I want the cafe to be, a place that brings warmth and happiness to everyone who comes in." As they talked about the menu, Nora felt excited. She told Jacob about her grandmother's famous peach cobbler recipe, and Jacob's eyes lit up. "That sounds delicious," he said. You should definitely put it on the menu." Nora eagerly agreed and added it to her list. She loved how Jacob understood her vision perfectly. His business skills were great, but it was his real interest and support that touched her the most. They talked about how the cafe should look. Nora described a cozy, welcoming space with soft colors and comfy seating. Jacob listened carefully and gave suggestions. "What if we have a small reading nook in one corner with some bookshelves and armchairs?" he suggested. Nora's face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea, Jacob. It would make the cafe feel even more like a home away from home. As they kept planning, Nora felt happy and thankful. She looked at Jacob, who was excitedly talking about ideas for a loyalty program. He was normally reserved, but now he was genuinely excited. Nora realized that this project was making him as happy as it was making her. In that moment, Nora knew her cafe would be more than just a business. Nora had always dreamed of opening a cafe, and with her friend Jacob helping her, she felt ready to make it come true. She spent time learning about rules and what she needed to do. One sunny day, Nora sat at her kitchen table with papers and her notebook. She picked up her phone and called the Small Business Bureau to find out how to get a business license. She was nervous, but did well because Jacob had prepared her. After she hung up, she was so happy because it felt like her dream was coming true. The next day, Nora met Jacob at the diner during her break and excitedly told him that she had called about the business license. Jacob was very proud of her. Nora then showed Jacob her notebook with a list of things to do and said she needed to start looking for a place for a cafe. She was very determined. Jacob smiled and said, "That's a great next step. Remember to think about where people walk and where to park when you're picking a place." As they talked about different locations, Nora felt excited and determined. She wasn't just dreaming about her cafe anymore. She was actually making it happen. With Jacob's help and advice, she felt stronger than ever. Jacob said, "Seeing you work on your dream is really inspiring. It's made me think about life differently." Nora held Jacob's hand and said, "I couldn't do this without you, Jacob. Your support means a lot to me." As they kept planning and dreaming together, Nora realized that starting the cafe was more than just opening a shop. It was about friendship, sticking with it, and believing in each other. Nora was excited about the future and couldn't wait to see what would come next. Nora rushed down the clean white hospital hallway where it smelled like medicine and the beeping of machines was loud. She held a small bunch of bright daisies, hoping they would make Jacob smile when she got to his room. Nora took a deep breath before going in. Seeing Jacob in the hospital bed looking pale and weak made her sad, but she smiled bravely as she walked over to him. "Jacob," she said softly, "how are you feeling?" Jacob's face lit up when he saw her. "Nora," he said, his voice weak but warm, "you didn't have to come." Nora put the flowers on the table next to his bed and sat down in a chair. "Of course I did," she said. "You're my friend, and I couldn't stay away." She took his hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. Jacob's eyes filled with tears, and he wiped them away. "You know," he said with a shaky voice, "I never thought I'd have a friend like you again after my accident. I pushed everyone away, but you never gave up on me." Nora felt her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Jacob," she whispered, "you've been such a good friend to me too. You've helped me believe in myself and my dreams." Jacob smiled weakly. "Your dreams, Nora, have given me something to look forward to. Watching you work towards opening your cafe has made me happy again." Nora's heart felt full. She didn't realize how much their friendship meant to Jacob. "I'm so thankful for you, Nora," Jacob continued. "You've shown me that life still has meaning, even when things are tough." Nora held his hand again, not able to speak because of the lump in her throat. They sat quietly, feeling how deep their friendship was. Nora felt so happy when she heard Jacob was well enough to leave the hospital. She wanted to be there for him when he went home. Her warm smile was a comfort as she helped him into his wheelchair. "I'm so glad you're feeling better, Jacob," she said with real happiness. "Let's get you home and settled in." As they went to Jacob's apartment, Nora noticed he still looked weak, but there was a new sparkle in his eyes that made her heart feel warm. Once inside, Nora busied herself making sure Jacob was comfortable. She fluffed his pillows, brought him a glass of water, and tidied up a bit. Jacob watched her with thanks and a smile. "Nora, you don't have to take care of me like this," he said softly. She looked at him, her eyes bright. I know I don't have to, Jacob. I want to. You've been a good friend to me, so let me help you. As days went by, Nora made it a habit to check on Jacob before and after her shifts at the diner. She brought him homemade meals, talked about her cafe plans, and just kept him company. One evening, while they were together in Jacob's living room, Nora realized how natural it felt to be there with him. She had come to depend on their talks, his advice, and his steady support. Jacob said softly, "I don't know what I'd do without you. Your friendship means so much to me." Jacob touched Nora's hand and said, "I feel the same way. You've brought light back into my life." They sat quietly for a moment, thinking about how their lives had changed since they became friends. Nora felt really grateful. She started this journey to open a cafe, but she found something even more valuable, a true friend in Jacob. Nora's feet hurt as she rushed to the diner. It had been a tough morning because Logan was sick with a fever and she had to find a last-minute babysitter. She was worried as she pushed open the diner door and the bell rang above her head. To her surprise, Jacob was there early. His wheelchair was by the entrance, and he had something in his lap. Nora was worried because it was unusual for Jacob to be there so early. "Jacob, is everything okay?" she asked, worried. Jacob looked at her and handed her a set of keys and a folded piece of paper. Without saying anything more, he wheeled himself to the door. "Jacob, wait," Nora called, but he had already left, and the bell rang again as the door closed behind him. Nora stood still, holding the keys and the note. She was confused and anxious, wondering what it meant and why Jacob had left so quickly. With shaky hands, she unfolded the note and read it, trying to understand what Jacob had done and why he left so suddenly. Nora blinked and blinked again, sure her eyes were playing tricks on her. The note was from Jacob, written neatly. He said he was giving her his old cafe, which had been closed since his accident. Not only that, but he was also leaving her his savings to help her start a new business. Nora felt weak and sat down in a booth, her eyes never leaving the paper. Tears started to blur the words as she whispered, "Oh, Jacob." She couldn't believe it. The keys in her hand suddenly felt very important. They weren't just keys. They were the keys to her dreams and the future she had always hoped for. Her heart was full of thanks for Jacob's kindness, but she was also a bit worried. She wondered why Jacob had left so suddenly and if he was okay. She wished he had stayed so she could thank him in person. She reread the note, cherishing every word Jacob had written about how her kindness had changed his life and given him hope when he had lost everything. He wanted to help her reach her dreams by giving her this gift. Tears flowed down her cheeks as she held the note close, feeling overwhelmed by Jacob's gift and his friendship. With trembling hands and a heart full of thanks, Nora held the keys to her new cafe. She took a deep breath, feeling excited about her dreams coming true. The weight of Jacob's gift felt like a warm hug of support. Nora opened the door to the cafe for the first time as its new owner. The space was dusty and needed a lot of work, but she could see its potential shining through. Sunlight came through the dirty windows, lighting up the old walls and worn furniture. "This is it," she whispered with a smile. "This is where it all begins." With new energy, Nora rolled up her sleeves and started working. She spent all her free time cleaning, painting, and planning. Her son Logan's laughter filled the empty space as he helped her pick colors for the walls. "How about this sunny yellow, Mom?" Logan asked, holding up a paint swatch. Nora's eyes sparkled. "It's perfect, honey, just like a warm hug." Day by day, the cafe began to change. Nora worked hard to make the cafe look nice. She put up cheerful curtains, arranged cozy places to sit, and filled the air with the smell of fresh-baked treats. As she worked, Nora thought about Jacob and wished he could see how happy and excited she was about the cafe. His kindness helped her start this journey, and she wanted to make him proud. Her friends from the diner came to help, painting walls and setting up furniture. Even her old boss gave her tips on how to run the cafe well. After many weeks, the cafe was ready. Nora stood in the middle of the room, looking at the warm yellow walls and smelling the fresh coffee. She unlocked the doors for the grand opening, and the first customers came in. Nora greeted them with a big smile and said, "Welcome to Nora's place." The cafe quickly filled with people she knew, her old coworkers, neighbors, and even her son's teacher. The room was full of happy chatter and the sound of coffee cups. Nora served homemade pastries and coffee, feeling a bit nervous but keeping her smile. She saw her son Logan proudly telling everyone, "That's my mom! She owns this place!" As the morning went on, Nora kept looking at the door, hoping Jacob would arrive. Just when she thought he might not come, she saw him. Jacob looked a bit pale but very determined as he rolled himself into the cafe. Nora felt her heart fill with happiness. She hurried over to him, careful not to bump into any chairs, and gave him a gentle hug. "Jacob, you made it," she said excitedly. Jacob's eyes sparkled as he looked around at the busy cafe. "I wouldn't have missed this for the world, Nora," he said softly but proudly. "Look at what you've done." Nora helped Jacob find a nice spot by the window where he could see everything happening in the cafe. And she brought him a cup of his favorite coffee and a slice of apple pie. As Nora went about her work, she kept glancing at Jacob. He sat there like a quiet protector, watching her with pride and happiness. His presence reminded her of how much she had achieved on her amazing journey. By lunchtime, the grand opening was a big success. The cafe was full of people who came to support her. Nora felt very thankful. Her cafe quickly became a favorite place in the town. Every morning, she opened the doors with pride and joy. The smell of fresh muffins and coffee welcomed everyone inside. As weeks went by, Nora noticed that people started coming back regularly. She remembered their names and favorite orders. Her kindness and care made everyone feel like part of a big, happy family. The cafe was a warm and cheerful place, just like Nora. She had painted the walls in soft colors and hung local artwork. Cozy chairs were spread out, inviting people to sit and relax. Jacob was always there to support Nora. He came to the cafe most mornings and sat by the window watching Nora work and greet customers. His eyes shone with pride whenever he saw her managing the cafe. When it was quieter, Nora would sit with Jacob and talk about how things were going. Jacob would give her helpful advice, always encouraging her with his kind words. "You're doing great, Nora," he would say warmly. "This place is special, just like you." Nora would blush at his compliments, but she knew he was right. The cafe had become more than just a business. Nora felt very proud as she watched her cafe fill up with people. She saw a group of teenagers sitting together, drinking hot chocolate and studying. It gave her a warm feeling inside, and she had an idea. The next day, Nora put up a help wanted sign in the window of the cafe. She knew there were many young people in town who needed work experience, and she wanted to help them. Within a week, she had interviewed several excited teenagers and hired 3 of them, Maya, and Zoe. Nora wanted to be a good teacher for them. She started each shift by teaching them something new about running the cafe, like making the best coffee and managing supplies. She always reminded them, every customer deserves a warm welcome. Make them feel at home. The teenagers learned quickly. Maya became great at making pretty latte art. Maya was excellent with customers, and Zoe was good at baking. Nora felt very proud as she saw them becoming more confident every day. Jacob, a friend of Nora's, noticed the positive changes at the cafe. He said, "You're doing more than just serving coffee, Nora. You're helping these kids with their futures." Nora agreed, her eyes a bit watery. She wanted the cafe to be a place where the teenagers could learn and follow their dreams. As time went on, Nora's cafe was known not just for its yummy food and cozy feeling, but also for helping young people learn and grow. Parents in town thanked Nora for giving their kids valuable work experience and life skills. Nora celebrated her young workers' achievements with joy. When Maya got into college, Nora threw a surprise party. When Maya's grades got better, Nora gave him a bonus. When Zoe's cookies became a favorite, Nora put them on the menu with Zoe's name. But Nora noticed that Jacob was getting sicker. He came to the cafe less often and looked tired. It made Nora sad to see her friend unwell, so she decided to help him. Nora changed her schedule to visit Jacob every day. She brought him fresh food from the cafe and spent time with him, talking about everything. Jacob thanked her and said, "You don't have to do this, Nora." Nora smiled and took his hand. She said, "I want to. You've done so much for me. Let me help you now." As they spent time together, their friendship grew stronger. Nora talked about the cafe and the teenagers she was helping. One day, while Nora was fixing Jacob's pillows, he started to speak. Nora had been thinking a lot about what Jacob asked her. She sat beside him, and Jacob's eyes were bright as he talked about the cafe, about her, and everything they had done together. He wanted her to know how happy he was with the legacy they were leaving behind. Nora felt tears in her eyes. Jacob gently said, "When I gave you that cafe, I hoped it would make a difference. What you've done with it is amazing. You've made it a warm, learning, and community place. That's something to be proud of." Nora held his hand, feeling full of emotion. "We did it together, Jacob. Your guidance and support made all the difference." Jacob smiled peacefully. "I'm so glad I was part of it, Nora. I'm glad I got to know you." Nora sat by Jacob's bed, holding his frail hand. The room was filled with warm light from the setting sun. Friends and community members were around them, showing their love and concern. Jacob's breathing was shallow, but his eyes were clear. Nora saw gratitude and peace in his gaze, which made her heart ache with sadness and love. Jacob whispered, "Thank you for everything." Nora's tears fell freely as she said, "No, Jacob, thank you. You changed my life and everyone's lives." Jacob smiled a little and looked at the people who had come to know him through Nora's cafe. "Look at what we've done," he said, his voice getting weaker. "This is what matters. This is what lasts." Nora nodded, unable to speak because of the lump in her throat. She felt a hand on her shoulder and saw Elena, her old coworker from the diner, giving silent support. As Jacob's breathing became harder, Nora leaned in close, her tears falling freely. "It's okay, Jacob. We're all here. You can rest now." With one last gentle squeeze of Nora's hand, Jacob took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Nora's eyes were closed, and she was very still. The room was quiet. Nora bowed her head and her shoulders shook with quiet crying. She felt warm hands on her back and heard soft, comforting voices from those around her. Even though she was deeply sad, she felt the love and support from the people she and Jacob had cared for. Through her tears, Nora whispered, "Goodbye, my dear friend. Thank you for everything." Nora stood in front of a special new place in her cafe. The wall was covered with photos of Jacob showing his warm smile. There were pictures of him at the diner with Nora and Logan, and even some old pictures from when he was a successful businessman. Each photo told a story about Jacob's life that had touched many people. She gently touched a photo of Jacob at the cafe's grand opening. His eyes were sparkling with pride and joy. Nora felt her heart fill with emotion as she remembered that day. "Oh, Jacob," she whispered, "I hope you can see this. I hope you know how much you meant to all of us." While she was lost in memories, she felt a gentle hand on her shoulder. She turned and saw Elena, her old coworker from the diner, standing next to her. "It's beautiful, Nora," Elena said softly. "Jacob would have loved it." Nora nodded, unable to speak because of the lump in her throat. She looked around the cafe and saw the faces of the people who had come to support her. There were regulars from the diner, new friends from the cafe, and even some young people she had hired and helped. One by one, they went to the special place. Some people left flowers, and others left small mementos. An elderly woman placed a handwritten note next to a photo and wiped away her tears. Logan, Nora's son, came up and hugged his mother tightly. "Mom, this is amazing. Uncle Jacob would be so proud." Nora felt happy when she heard Logan call Jacob Uncle. It showed how much Jacob was part of their family. As more people came to visit and share stories about Jacob, Nora felt surrounded by love and support. She was in her cafe, looking at friends and neighbors, feeling grateful even though she was sad. She saw how Jacob's memory lived on through the kindness and connections in the cafe. Nora stood behind the counter, looking at the busy cafe filled with laughter and the smell of coffee. She saw people from all over, talking and connecting. Her heart felt warm as she cleaned the counter and looked at Jacob's corner, filled with pictures and memories. She thought back to when she first met Jacob at the diner, never knowing how much he would change her life. She remembered their talks, how Jacob's tough side softened to show a kind heart, and how he helped her follow her dreams. A young waitress came to tell Nora that a table needed more coffee. Nora saw some of her old diner customers and felt thankful for their support. As she returned to the counter, she looked at Jacob's corner again and imagined hearing his voice giving advice and making jokes. A tear fell down her cheek, but she smiled and whispered, "We did it, Jacob. Look at what we've made together." The cafe was not just a business, it was a symbol of kindness, unexpected friendships, and what happens when someone believes in you. Nora realized her dream had come true and even become better than she had hoped. Would you help someone like Nora if you knew it could change their life? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. If you like the story, please subscribe to my channel. I work hard to write these stories for you, and your support means a lot to me.